First of all, adding Israel to Central Command, taking it away from U.S. European Command, was long overdue. It's something for which I pushed very hard when I was, in fact, the Central Command commander, and Israel was not part of the U.S. CENTCOM area of responsibility. If they're not in your area of responsibility, however cooperative European Command may be, they're just not integrated into your plans and operations the way that they really need to be, and the way that it was on that night and proved to be so critically important. The truth is that CENTCOM, certainly dating back to my day and probably before it, had worked very hard with all of the countries in the region that were willing to contribute to integrate our early warning systems, ballistic and missile defense tracking systems. And although some of the countries, I won't get into details here either, would not actually share their own feed with the others, we shared it among all of them by integrating it ourselves and then feeding it back to them. We call this bilateral multilateralism, where again, we had the relationship with each of the countries that they might not actually have with each other. But by taking their feeds and then pushing back an integrated feed, that was a pretty effective way. And keep in mind, of course, that at that time, as is publicly known, we planned and even rehearsed the operation that would destroy the Iran nuclear program. And we were concerned about what Iran might do to retaliate. And among the actions to mitigate the risks of retaliation through the air was, in fact, to take that initiative to integrate all of the feeds, again, the early warning systems, and they're really quite sophisticated. I can't speak to which ones of those were shared in that particular operation, and if I knew, I wouldn't do it. But it's well known, it's publicly reported that a number of countries in the region collaborated that evening, as well as U.S. allies from outside the region, and actually took down well over a third of those different systems before they even reached Israeli airspace. And then, of course, the tracking of that would have contributed as well. That's what's necessary for this kind of very, very rapid tracking and response. This is really moving faster than individuals can take decisions. At a certain point in time, you give the command to the weapon systems to execute at weapons free. And when they establish the conditions for launch, they go ahead and do that. But it was a remarkable display. It was a real tribute, certainly, first and foremost, to the integrated air and ballistic missile defense systems of Israel, but clearly also to those of the U.S. countries in the region and allies, all working together to ensure that what could have been very, very damaging. A lot has been made that this was telegraphed well in advance, and that's true. But all of that headed to Israel. No one, certainly Iran, could not predict that some of these weren't going to land in populated areas and do enormous damage and create death and destruction. I think the benefits of the kinds of relationships that have been forged are different categories, if you will. There is a security relationship between Israel and U.S. Central Command and Central Command's ability to integrate capabilities of other countries in the region that are not actually in any kind of formal military alliance, really. They have agreements on this component of security, and that is able to extend to helping Israel. The benefits from diplomatic initiatives like the Abraham Accords, where the UAE and Bahrain and then other countries outside the Middle East recognize Israel formally, diplomatically, and vice versa. I think those are very, very significant as well for the countries involved. They involve, obviously, trade, access to Israeli technology, in some cases, access to certain Gulf states' technology. The UAE in particular is very impressive in a variety of their technological advances. And again, a variety of other overflight rights, tourism, you name it. It just keeps expanding. And there are not just the first order effects, but then there are second and third and other order effects as well. And in this case, of course, the possibility of seeing this between Saudi Arabia and Israel would be particularly important, but noting that over the last year and a half, the Saudis have had to raise the bar, if you will, when it comes to what they want to see from Israel with respect to the Palestinian people in the West Bank and also presumably Gaza. And that could be challenging. I won't get into domestic Israeli politics to a domestic Israeli audience, but the obvious challenges there have grown, noting that, of course, that agreement was reportedly quite close to being concluded prior to October 7th. President Trump himself has repeatedly said that he would like to orchestrate some kind of, he's always looking for a deal. And that can be a positive attribute. But really, this comes down to whether or not Israel is willing to make commitments about the Palestinian people and a two-state or two-state-ish solution going forward, because I think that is what the Saudis will have to get, noting that the cause of the Palestinian people inside the kingdom has been dramatically magnified by what has taken place since October 7th. In fact, arguably one of the reasons that Hamas took that action when it did was to prevent that agreement from being concluded. I would hope that something very positive could come out of what was the worst day in Israeli history. But of course, to enable that, there will have to be some significant compromise on the side of the Israelis and the Palestinians. And I fear that with the current Palestinian leadership, that will not be possible. But if all of this could come together and there is a path forward for a way that Palestinians and Israeli Jews can live peacefully side by side, that would be the ultimate good that might come from a day that was without parallel in Israeli history.